Right, hello and welcome to Elevenses. It's show number 256. It's Wednesday, the 20th of July. It's 11:15, roughly speaking, and the reason for the late start is because, as you can see, the message from Steve in New Zealand. He just told me that I'd been on air for 15 minutes and I'd had the microphone accidentally muted. So now he's saying things are much better. Right, so what have I got for you in today's show? Well, obviously it's a little bit cooler today, a little bit fresher, down to a crispy 26 degrees instead of yesterday's 40 odd degrees of heat. So news today, at least 25 dead in a collision between a fuel tanker and motorcyclists in Indonesia. A rider had to wait over 4 hours for an ambulance after he was seriously injured in a collision in Wales. A police chief has responded to the motorcycle theft issue in Edinburgh, and meanwhile a driver of a van full of stolen bikes didn't actually know they were stolen. BMW's Baby G310RR sports bike has broken cover, and finally a rather long explanation about how Hackney Council are targeting motorcycle commuters at the end of the show. So don't forget, the show goes out on Wednesdays and Sundays at 11, so do join me if you possibly can on those particular days. Right, okay, so just a little bit of housekeeping before I go any further. We have the first or the next ride, I should say, which is going out. We're going into Essex from the Epping area out towards Suffolk, which is a lovely part of the country to ride. That's on Saturday the 23rd of July, 10 o'clock. There's one person at the moment booked up. I would love to see a few more people go out on that ride, so if you possibly can make it, do come along. The link to book for that event is going up on screen any moment. Do remember, they are pre-book only because I'm only taking limited number of people on these rides, and they are nice gentle bimbles in the country, not high-speed hacks. So if you want to come along on Saturday, do book up there and let me know. Now, secondly, the next Science of Being Seen presentation, the full show, by the way, goes out on the first Wednesday in August. And looking a little bit further ahead, I've now created a link for you to book up to my next talk, which will be systems and the need to be systematic. I expect that one to be a little bit contentious and to create just a little bit of dialogue, as I explained that it is not the system that's important, it's how you use it. So tickets for those are now available on the same link as I've just put up. If you do want to come along to any of those, do click the link and head over there and book your slot. Now, on with the news. At least 25 people were feared dead after a fuel truck ploughed into a group of a dozen motorcyclists and other vehicles in Indonesia. The crash occurred on a busy intersection near the capital Jakarta on Monday and was said to injure dozens of people. Local news reports showed vehicles and bodies scattered across the scene. Although the cause of the collision has not been officially revealed by police, the locals blame a new traffic light system recently installed at the T-junction. It was reported that the motorcyclists were all stopped at the red light when the truck collided with them. Now, over in North Wales, a rider who was subsequently taken to an intensive care following a collision on the B470 Betsy Coed Road was forced to spend 4.5 hours waiting for an ambulance before being taken to intensive care, where he remained for 2 days. Now, Jeremy Bright, who's 54, is himself an NHS worker. He branded the delay as unacceptable. He was seriously injured in a collision with a car at midday on Saturday, July the 9th. He sustained 8 fractured ribs, a fractured spine, and a broken wrist in the crash, and police closed the road. A call was made to the ambulance service at 12:10 p.m, but a crew didn't arrive until 4.5 hours had passed at 4:40 p.m. Now, Mr. Bright went out of his way to praise passers-by who stopped, and also the care of the ambulance team who eventually treated him. And what he said was, when I came round, people were already shouting, "Call an ambulance." There were two off-duty police officers there. I'd like to thank them. There was an off-duty paramedic. I'd like to thank her. An off-duty GP stayed with me the whole time, as well as a guy from Zip World, which is the organisation over the road from where he crashed. And he sat on the floor with me for 4 or 5 hours. There was also a retired special needs teacher who kept me in check, shall we say, for 5 hours. I have a reasonable tolerance for pain, but I was really struggling. I can only thank the ambulance crew that did get to me because I was on morphine as soon as they arrived. And he went on to say that simply is not acceptable. As you can imagine, I was in excruciating pain. I have a fracture of the spine at the base of the neck. I could have bled to death internally in the time it took them to get to me. I would have got hypothermia if it was raining. Liz Wedley, the Welsh Ambulance Services Head of Service, the emergency medical service in North Wales, said the service was struggling to cope with an especially high surge in demand during the warm weekend. And she said, "We were really sorry to hear about Mr. Bright's experience and know how distressing this would have been in the circumstances. The pressure on UK ambulance services has been well documented in recent weeks. Demand in Wales on the weekend just gone was especially high. We had almost 2,000 calls to 999 on Sunday alone." And she asked the public to help by dialing 999 only for serious life-threatening emergencies. Mr. Bright was expected to remain in hospital for at least a week, but he said, "It's not the first time I've been knocked off my bike, but I can assure you it's the last time. Thinking I'm quitting biking now," he says. I can't help but think that's actually bolting the stable door a bit, but it's obviously a very traumatic experience for him. I wish him the best. So, okay, Kevin's looked in. Good morning, Kevin. A little bit late, but that's not a bad thing because I've only just started due to a problem with the microphone earlier. Now, next story. Since I first reported the explosion of motorcycle theft in Edinburgh, the Scottish capital, motorcycle activists there have been continuing to press the police to tackle what they see as an out-of-control problem. And that almost certainly accounts for a statement from the Chief Inspector Sam Ainsley that was published in the Edinburgh News. And she says that Operation Soteria, where do they get these names from, is a citywide initiative focused on tackling thefts and the reckless use of motorcycles, which has been running since 20th of June 2022. It just, of course, happens to be almost exactly the date of the first protests I reported. Now, Chief Inspector Ainsley says the partnership includes the road policing team, a special Edinburgh Division Operation Orbit team who are trained in the use of off-road motorcycles, and that they are all working proactively with local communities to prevent and tackle these concerns. And she says, over the last 4 weeks, Operation Soteria has secured 9 arrests, with a further 2 individuals reported for warrant. In real terms, this translates to 57 charges, all relating to motorcycle theft and antisocial behaviour offences, and the recovery of 36 motorcycles with a value totalling approximately £145,000. Well, if you divide that figure, 150,000 by 30, very roughly, you get quite a big amount of money, which is a little bit of a surprise, because I do know that many of the bikes that are stolen are smaller motorcycles and end up being scooted around the local park, of course. But one thing I do feel is a real mistake is to conflate the organised theft of higher value machines, which that figure actually implies is what they were recovering, with the problem of antisocial use of motorcycles. They are different problems. They're both crimes, but they are very different issues. And if there's one result of that, it's likely to be that the police and the public alike actually consider motorcycle theft as a nuisance rather than a real problem for the value of these bigger bikes that vanish never to be seen again. And then the statement actually turns into a PR spin, which talks about enjoying the great privilege of living and working in a diverse city, homes, incorporating homes, businesses, etc., large number of amenities, visitor attractions, etc., etc., etc. And then it also says about better weather encouraging excessive drinking indoors and outdoors. I'm not really sure how that bears on motorcycle theft at all. If the statement was intended to reassure Edinburgh's motorcyclists, I doubt the police have managed that. Now, don't forget, this show does go out, as I've said, Wednesdays and Sundays, 11 o'clock. You can catch up with it over on my YouTube channel, Survival Schools UK. Pop over there and you can get all the old shows. This one will be going out with the front 14 minutes cut off because of the dead microphone issue. Now, it's not to say that police don't sometimes have successes when it comes to bike theft, but it does seem it's often more luck than judgment. So, for example, earlier this month in Bolton, a 22-year-old man was sentenced to 14 months in prison, suspended for 2 years, ordered to undertake 100 hours of unpaid work. Now, Aidan Doherty will also have to participate in 19 sessions of a thinking skills program, plus 5 days of rehabilitation activities. Why? Well, back in August 2020, he was caught driving a van full of stolen motorcycles. And the reason he was stopped was because he was seen using a mobile phone. Now, Anna Bond, prosecuting, told how he was then seen to make a gesture towards a motorcyclist and how that motorcyclist then contravened a red light and drove towards the defendant's van, getting alongside him and passing an unknown item to him. The van and the motorcycle continued travelling in tandem until police stopped the van. The bike apparently sped off. When the van was opened, police officers found a green Kawasaki ZR 900, a red BMW GS 1200 and a Honda CB 500F. And they valued the bikes at 9,500 for the Beamer. The Kawasaki was worth 6,000 and the Honda 5,500. Now, all three of these high value machines were confirmed to have been stolen from the Bolton area over a 4-day period at the beginning of August 2020. A further search of the van revealed £1,500 in cash, a kitchen knife and number plates with double-sided tape on their back, which actually belonged to a Land Rover Discovery in Essex. Now, Aidan Doherty denied knowing the vans were stolen or that a kitchen knife was in the van. He said he'd just bought the bikes, but couldn't say where from or give any documentation, said his defence. Now, the court heard that Doherty was actually part of a criminal gang and it was his job to move the stolen motorcycles, and he pleaded guilty to possessing the knife and 3 counts of handling stolen goods. The court then heard he has previous convictions for offences including attempted burglary, taking a vehicle without consent, and spent just time in a local young offenders institution. He was out apparently for 10 months before this particular offence, but defending counsel said he now recognises the need to address his offending behaviour. Presumably that and the compensation of £200 that he was ordered to pay each owner of the motorcycles will make them feel a lot better. Okay, a couple of comments have come in. Kevin says many bikes get exported or stripped for parts. Yes, containers make that easy indeed. And prevention of theft is far more effective than detecting crimes. Couldn't agree more. But as I've said several times on this show, the prevention of theft should be down to the manufacturer to make it difficult, if not near impossible, to steal the bike. It shouldn't be left to the owner to have to fork out lots of cash to stop a bike being stolen. Bikes basically are easy to remove. Even cars are easy to remove. There's not the focus on anti-theft. I would far rather have some anti-theft equipment fitted to the bike than the latest fancy traction control, riding modes, and the latest wheeze, of course, is Skyhook suspension. Anyway, moving on from that, BMW have revealed the not very secret G310RR. So let's have a quick look at it. Here it is, quite an attractive. That's the wrong machine. Hang on a minute. Let me get you the right machine. There it is. That's the BMW. The bike actually comes in 2 editions. There's a standard version which is all black, and the sport model, which is in that rather more attractive white, blue and red. It's the BMW racing livery, I believe, which matches BMW's other RR model. Now the RR sports bike joins an entire family of G310 machines, including the basic G310, the GT310 GS and a G310R model. They all feature exactly the same 313 single-cylinder TVS engine that produces 33.5 horsepower at 9,700 RPM and 27.3 Newton meters of torque at 7,700 RPM. Now, as you probably know, the bikes were actually developed in collaboration with the Indian manufacturer TVS Motor Company, and rumours about the launch of the BMW RR became rife when TVS launched their own Apache RR 310, and that was the picture I flashed up on screen. I was slightly out of order there. So as you can see, the both bikes share the same look and design. The very distinctive front end there, actually, on the fairing, looks very much like the bigger 1000cc RR. Even though that's the Indian motorcycle, they have the same TFT screen display that offers Bluetooth connectivity. It's the same tank, the same body panels, the same frame, the same fairing, just a change of screen on the BMW. Riding position and dimensions are identical. Identical, I should say, forks, monoshock disc brakes, dual channel ABS with 3 modes, twin projector headlights, 17-inch wheels, 4 riding modes on both machines. So really, apart from that fairing and the different screen, it's only the color and graphics which differentiate the two bikes. Now, rather oddly, at the moment at least, it's the Indian built Apache that offers a built to order program that includes options for the bike such as fully adjustable suspension, lower clip-on handlebars, rear set foot pegs, a really useful brass coating on the chain, and customizable color options. But predictably, in India at least, the BMW is around £200 more expensive than the Apache, and of course we don't get for the Apache over here. Right, now that brings me to the final point that I want to cover today. A little bit of a long ramble here in some ways, but I think it's an important one to talk about because what happens in London almost inevitably transplants to other cities. Now, Hackney Council here in London are under fire for plans to charge for motorcycle parking right across the borough. Now, here's the basic plan. Residents will need a permit to park a motorcycle anywhere in Hackney. You'll be entitled to 1 motorcycle permit per person. Businesses will also need a permit to park work motorcycles. They can get up to 5 permits per premises, each allowing 3 bikes to park, but only 1 bike at any one time. Doctors, health and social care permit holders will still need to apply for a permit for their bike, and blue badge holders will also need to apply for a special permit to park for free in their home zone. Now, finally, what happens if you are a visitor or a commuter into Hackney from outside the borough? Well, in that case, you will need to buy, a visitor e-voucher on a daily basis and then park in a shared use or pay to display bay, and the proposed charges could see riders paying £6 an hour. So the charges clearly affect motorcyclists who are resident and therefore don't have a choice about where they park. If you live in a place, you basically got to park your vehicle somewhere, and if you don't have off-road parking, then it's on the road. But it also impacts anyone who works in the borough and needs a motorcycle to get to their place of work or study, for that matter. Now, not surprisingly, a petition launched by a group called Save London Motorcycling is opposing these planned charges, and it's attracted almost 3,000 signatures in 5 days. I'll try and find the petition actually, because I really think it's worth actually supporting them on this one. Now, this is the issue really. Aside from cashing in on anyone parking a two-wheeler on the street, Hackney actually want to penalise anyone using motorcycles for commuting. So let's have a look at the justifications that Hackney are actually using to back the introduction of charges. Now, the first thing they say is that it's a health issue. A spokeswoman for the council said, "We are committed to improving local air quality and tackling the climate emergency." The council says that they've done this because they were asking people's views back in 2020, and since motorcycles, quote, "contribute to local emissions," unquote, they decided last year to, quote, "place motorcycles on the same footing as other vehicles with permit prices based solely on the CO2 emissions they produce," unquote. However, there are significant flaws in that claim that the move is to clean up air. You could actually drive a coach and some methane producing horses right through that argument. Now, first of all, the council admits that the size of a vehicle is not a factor that is taken into account. Now, as a Save London motorcycling spokesperson said, "It's a basic fairness point. The council is proposing to charge motorcycles the same amount as cars because they say motorcycles have the same impact as cars. That's false. The evidence that they've used to get that conclusion is incorrect, and it's absolutely not fair to charge us the same amount of cars." Well, in fact, I would say that they don't have just interpreted the evidence incorrectly. There just is no evidence, and they don't have a backing for this. They're simply not looking at the fuel economy of the vehicle concerned. And frankly, if the council were serious about their claims for improving air quality, that would be one of the very first things to look at. Now, it's actually very easy to calculate CO2 emissions. If you place a litre of fuel in your tank and then burn it, your vehicle will produce just over 2 kilograms of carbon dioxide. 2.16 kilograms to be precise. So let's look at some sample figures. My XJ6, for example, travels around 12 miles on a litre of fuel. So assuming I had a 12-mile round trip through Hackney, I would be adding 2.16 kilograms of CO2 to the atmosphere in the borough. If I took out the car, in urban driving, if I'm ultra careful, I get about 36 to 37 mpg, so say 8 miles per litre. So over the same journey, I'd burn 50% more fuel, 1.5 litres, and so I would produce 50% more CO2, 3.24 kilograms. And if I was sad enough to commute to work in a 20 mpg gas guzzler, the same journey would require 4.4 litres of fuel, and I would produce no less than 9.5 kilograms of CO2. So what would the impact be if I swapped to a small motorcycle? Now, it's relatively straightforward for a sort of 100cc scooter or something similar to that to reach 120 mpg. Well, then it would travel 26 miles on a litre of petrol, and so the same 10-mile journey would consume just 0.38 of a litre, just over a third of a litre, and it would pump less than 1 kilogram, just 830 grams of CO2 into the atmosphere. So less than 1/10 of the gas guzzler and around a quarter of what my fairly small engined car produces. Now, that's basic maths. If I can work that out, so can Hackney Council. So I asked Hackney Council, is that fair and equitable? And the obvious answer is no, it ruddy well isn't. Now, even if you decide bikes should pay, there's no good reason for a flat charge system. The capacity of the motorcycle is clearly recorded on the logbook. It's accessible to number plate recognition systems, and as it's paid in advance, nobody actually has to check the bay where the vehicle is parked other than to see whether it has a permit, and the permit can be issued just like road tax on the basis of capacity. So there's absolutely no excuse for not introducing a tiered system. There's a second objection, of course, that is immediately obvious the moment you think about it. CO2 isn't the only measure of clean air. CO2 is a greenhouse gas, yes, but the real problem for health are the NOx, nitrous oxide gases. And since the latest bikes not only match the latest cars, but again, because they use fewer litres of fuel to travel the same distance, they will produce less NOx than a car travelling the same distance. So if you really want to hammer a big nail in the coffin for claims that this is a rationale, is clean air, then you have to ask, why is it that the council is also saying that non-polluting electric motorcycles and scooters will also have to pay these planned charges? That clearly is not a clean air argument. It's transparently false, in my opinion. Now, The council also claimed that motorcycles take up valuable curb space from local residents and businesses. Now, frankly, I fail to see that. Most roads actually have parking restrictions along them, so you're not allowed to park there. And it's hardly as if you can't park outside your local house for rows and rows and rows of motorcycles parked, is it? Now, okay, there is a problem in some places with the myriad of delivery bikes working for the likes of Uber Eats and Deliveroo, stopping on yellow lines, and in some places even parking on pavements, but that is a parking issue that can be dealt with via the penalty charge system, not specifically a motorcycle problem, is it? In any case, if you stop motorcycles parking, you'll only free up the space for another vehicle, so it's hardly likely that residents or businesses will benefit from making motorcycles avoid Hackney as a place to park. Now, if there's a problem with space, of course, then surely bikes are a solution rather than a problem. Yes, delivery vans need to get into parking spaces, and yes, those delivery bays should be kept clear. But if you're looking at parking in parking areas, then a motorcycle takes up roughly a sixth of the space of a car, and yet it's now being treated exactly the same as a single occupancy car when it comes to putting that vehicle onto the roadside. And frankly, as other councils around the UK are increasingly aware, speeding up traffic generally by making a switch to motorcycles for short journeys would benefit everyone using the roads if they didn't make other journeys in motor cars. So there is a potential benefit. We have to be a bit careful how we argue with that one. But anyway, and then there's the cost issue, of course. Now, not only is there a charge to park in the previously free bays under the council's plans, which the Save Motorcycling London group says will affect low-paid workers, medics and delivery drivers, but there's a crucial point. Motorcycles, scooters and mopeds would only be able to park in a bay for up to 4 hours. As an SLM member named Rachel said, the purpose of this is to prevent commuting by motorcycle. You can't easily move to another bay if you're commuting, and they are 4-hour bays. Now, Hackney Council spokeswoman freely admitted this when she said that the limited time in parking bays would be discouraging the use of motorbikes for commuting, while still allowing businesses, delivery riders and other organisations that provide valuable services to continue to do so. It's a cost, of course, to that rider or that business. So if you block people from commuting to work, assuming that they don't simply go and work somewhere else and leave Hackney at a disadvantage with when it comes to finding people to work in those local businesses, the obvious question is, how are people who live outside the borough and work in it supposed to get there? Now, Hackney Town Hall, for example, is 9 miles door to door from here, where I live in northwest London. Now, if you're a London resident or have tried to travel by public transport in the city, you'll know that it's all very well if you happen to live close to a hub, a station. You'll know that it's relatively easy to move in and out of the centre, but you'll also know that many cross-London routes are tortuous, even if you are cycling. A lot of them are quite awkward, and the public transport options often require multiple changes and can be time consuming. And of course, those services are overcrowded at peak hours. So 9 miles, clearly too far to walk. In theory, I could cycle. Google Maps puts the journey at around an hour, but cycling, particularly cycling in the city, isn't for everyone. Even with an assisted bicycle, I very much doubt my partner, for example, who has had 2 knee replacements, could manage a 9-mile commute. As it happens, she works mostly from home, but spends 1 day a week in her office, which just happens to be in the neighbouring borough of Islington, where she utilises a spare parking space in a legal practice. Now, what if I take the motorcycle? Well, on the XJ6, I can ride there in approximately 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer if the traffic is really bad. But the current cost of that round trip is less than £3 for fuel. On a smaller bike, if I did it on a 125, for example, it wouldn't take any longer, but I could do it on probably £1, not much more than £1 anyway, for the there and back journey. Now, the same trip using tube and underground takes 47 minutes according to Google Maps. There's a short walk at either end, which is not a particular problem. There is one change, so it's actually a relatively straightforward run by public transport. But if I didn't live right on top of the tube station, and if it wasn't for the fact that Hackney Town Hall is right next door to Hackney Central, which is a major transport hub, in fact, we could easily double that time. Now, maybe I can live with the extra 15 minutes of the trip over my bike on public transport, but if I'm adding the cost in, all of a sudden it starts to get a bit tricky. Now, public transport costs at least £6.40 return, according again to the fares calculation. Now, it may not sound much, but compared with the cost of putting a fiver in the tank of a scooter every week, that would cost an extra £27 a week to get to work. Now, over the cost of a year, that would add around £1,200 to my bill if I was commuting and parking in Hackney. And guess what? That just happens to be very close to the cost of parking day in, day out in Hackney for a sort of say 45, 46 weeks a year of commuting. Is that a coincidence? Somehow I doubt it. Right, okay, so if what happens in London tends to visit places elsewhere without too much delay, if you happen to be saying, well, it's just a London problem, it's just a Hackney problem, even if you live in London, if you think it's not going to happen near you, I would start thinking again. I've said this before when it came to emission zones. They're being rolled out across the country. Everybody said, oh, it's just a London issue. It isn't. It will be exploited by other councils if they are able to get away with it here. Right, so finally, I have put my most recent tips on Tuesday articles from my Facebook and coffee pages together. These, if you remember, were all about what to carry on the bike. They detailed some items that I always have with me: phone charger, power cell with a built-in torch, a lightweight set of waterproofs, a visor cleaning kit, a puncture repair kit, and a side stand puck are always in my travel accessories on my bike, regardless of where I'm going. And as a bonus, I put them together into a mini ebook, which I do have a picture of. Here it is. It's not a very exciting picture of a cover, but that's the cover you'll get, which actually has a bonus additional item, which I also think happens to be well worth tucking away somewhere on the bike for those days when you'll need it. And you can find out what the item is by downloading a new mini ebook. It costs £3. It's available from my coffee shop, and you can access that. I've lost the link to it. I was going to put a link up to my coffee shop. I seem to have deleted it. Okay, I'll put that up for you in just a moment. But as I say, £3 gets you the access to that particular item. While you're over there, do have a look at all the other items that are in my coffee shop. I think you'll find something of interest to purchase or read for free. There's plenty of free reading. Right, I managed to dig out the link while I was waffling a bit there, so there it is. Thank you very much indeed for looking in. Don't forget the ride on Saturday. You're more than welcome to come along. It's, as I say, Epping up into Essex and Suffolk. Lovely ride it'll be on a nice sunny day. Do join me if you're anywhere in the area. Nice gentle bimble. And I hope I will see you on that. Don't forget these shows that are coming up. Science of Being Seen, now just a couple of weeks away to the full presentation again. So time to sign up for that if you want to catch that. I should be back with the next show on Sunday, all things being equal. And hopefully you'll all be out there riding safely, enjoying the slightly less hot weather. Still nice and warm, of course, but not the scorching heat we've had over the last few days. So if you are out there on your bike, be safe and make sure you stay shiny side up.